Now, should you buy a brand new Mazda 2 in 2023? The reason why I'm asking that question is because this got a very light facelift for 2023, and it's largely the same car that's been out for a little while now. Now, if you live overseas, you probably know that the Mazda 2 is now a Toyota Yaris, but it just has a Mazda badge on the front. That is not that car. That is the hybrid Mazda 2, which we don't get here in Australia just yet. So what you're looking at is a lightly refreshed petrol-only lineup for the Mazda 2, and this one right here is the most expensive Mazda 2 you can buy. And so let's find out what you get for your money and if it's actually worth buying one of these compared to what else you can buy for the same amount of cash. Now, like I said, this is the most expensive Mazda 2 you can buy right now. It's priced over $31,000 drive away. So let's see what you get. First of all, you get automatic wipers, you get automatic headlights, you get LED headlights and LED daytime running lights, but you do get halogen indicators. You get this black grille with this little red insert that you get on the front and rear bumper to let everyone know that this is the new Mazda 2. And you get this glossy badge here for your radar cruise control. And there's a camera below here for your 360-degree camera. And the color you see here is called Airstream Blue. And it's one of my favorite colors out right now in any car, and especially looks good on this Mazda 2. Now, I'm pretty sure this is the second smallest set of wheels I've ever tested. The entry-level version of the Mazda 2 gets 15-inch wheels, where this gets 16-inch wheels, but they do stick out a bit from the tires, so you have to be careful parking this thing against the curb. And then thankfully it has a 360-degree parking camera to help you with that. Now, what else I do like is that this does have keyless locking and unlocking here via a little button on either side of the car. You get automatic folding mirrors with blind spot monitoring built into them, which is quite good as well. And it's worth noting this is one of Mazda's lightest cars they make, next to the MX-5, which is pretty interesting. And that's also good when you consider how little power this thing has. And that's because under here we have a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol motor. What does that mean? Well, this thing is super reliable because it hasn't changed much. It's really low strain because it doesn't produce a whole bunch of power. It only produces 81 kilowatts and 142 newton meters of torque, and that's slightly less power than you get with the manual, which produces 1 more kilowatt and 2 more newton meters of torque, which sort of makes a difference in a car that's this lightweight. But no, that doesn't really make a difference at all. And to be honest, you're not going to notice a whole bunch of change between this and the manual if you're doing a drag race between the two. Now, you get disc brakes up front, but you get drum brakes at the back. You might be screaming at your screen going, why the hell are you getting drum brakes in 2023? Well, that's actually pretty much the standard for cars in this category. Things like the Suzuki Ignis gets rear drum brakes, and even the MG MG3. And also up top, you are getting a shark fin antenna instead of a normal aerial antenna, which you get on the standard Mazda 2. But if you spend more money, you get a cool shark fin. Now at the back, you get a rear wiper stuck onto the body, not in the glass of the car, which looks quite odd, but they've been doing that for some time now, so people are pretty much used to that. You also get a pretty standard set of taillights at the back. You get badging for Skyactiv G to let everyone know you've got a Skyactiv motor, and also Mazda 2 badging. And then down below, you get this red insert on the back, which literally does nothing. It's just there for aesthetics. And you've also got another thing that literally does nothing but just looks cooler, is the fact that this comes with a tailpipe extension, which you don't get on the base model. So it does look a bit sportier at the back. Now in the back here, you get over 200 litres of boot space. And you also get this hard cover, and you do get a spare tyre and everything you need to change one underneath the boot floor. It's pretty spacious back here, but it isn't going to be so great if you have big suitcases to pack and if you want to carry multiple people and luggage. But it's going to be okay for 2 people, and I would suggest buying some duffel bags to be able to make the most of this space back here. And if you want to fold the seats down, they do fold down in a 60-40 split to make a little bit more space inside. And it does become a pretty spacious car because it's quite bubbly. But if you're trying to buy this for a family, you are going to be struggling to put everything here in the boot. Now the doors are very lightweight in the Mazda 2, and it does get a bit cramped here if you're sitting in the back with some adults. So these seats are set up for adults to be comfortable up front with all the legroom they want. But if I fold this seat forwards in front of me, just like that, I will give myself decent amounts of feet room, okay amounts of knee room thanks to these thin front seats, and I have okay amounts of headroom, but it's going to feel quite squished back here. And even as a 5'11" adult, I'm starting to feel a bit cramped back here. But I have had 3 adults in the back of a Mazda 2, and it's actually not too bad. It is a bit tight because this middle seat isn't the most comfortable to be trapped in, but you can sort of squeeze in here just okay. But you don't get any air vents in the back. You don't really get any storage pockets. You only get one map pocket, which I think is a bit ridiculous, and you don't even get an armrest back here. So it is going to be pretty lame to spend a lot of time back here in the Mazda 2, but you do have ISOFIX points here for some baby seats if you need to fit them, and at least this top spec model here comes with some nice leather and suede material in the back to make it feel a little bit more plush in the back of a Mazda 2. Now up front, we do have decent amounts of space, but we don't get any electronic adjustment on this top spec model. You do have manual seats, and they are finished in leather with red stitching and also more suede, and they do look quite sporty. But something I found with these seats is that they don't really have too much support for your shoulders or lateral support. So when you go through corners, you do feel like you're going to be falling out of these seats just a little bit more than something that might have a bit more support in it. Now materials in here, very affordable materials, lots of plastic through here, but that's not really a big issue because you know it's an inexpensive car. But what is nice is that there is some more suede up here on the dashboard with some red stitching, which looks and feels quite premium, and more of it on the doors here. So I really like that touch as well. Now we get a 7-inch touchscreen here, but it's only a touchscreen when you're stationary. While you're driving, you have to use this sort of dial down here with a little palm rest on it, which is actually not too bad to use, and I do like it because it's a bit less distracting than actually touching a screen. We get red accents around the actual air vents here, which look great. We get ourselves an analog dial with some small LCD displays on each side for the driver's display. There's nothing too technical going on there. We do get a heads-up display here in this top spec model. We get a leather-wrapped steering wheel, which every single Mazda 2 gets, as well as a leather-wrapped handbrake here, which is a manual handbrake, which is quite nice. We have 2 cup holders, a little storage area back here, and a little divider which pops out like this, which makes me wonder why there's a hole in it just like this. Now I really like the climate controls in here. You actually get different climate controls in this top spec model because they are nice silver dials instead of washing machine dials like you find on the base model. You get okay amounts of storage here in the glove box, and there's really not much storage here in the door bins. Now what I love is that the steering wheel here is telescopically adjustable, so you can get nice and comfortable, and it is a very comfortable daily driver. You get 2 USB type A ports, you do get a 12-volt socket, and you do have a little SD card here for your navigation. But I do think that navigation feels a bit redundant in this car because you'll be probably using a cable like this to connect up to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. But here you do have an automatic shifter here, which is finished with a little bit of a satin gray material around it, and there's some piano black material around that as well. And you do get a little sport button here in this top spec model. And additionally, you do have more buttons on this steering wheel than you will in the base model. So you have buttons for your telephone controls and also your radar cruise control. And every Mazda 2 comes with push button start, which I found quite nice. But if you don't like all this fancy material in here and you just want to get the entry-level Mazda 2 and you also want to check out the manual transmission, what's the base model like? And so what I think one of the most important cars in the Mazda 2 lineup is the entry-level base model of the Mazda 2, which is available with either a 6-speed manual or an automatic gearbox. And I can tell you something very interesting about this gearbox is that you actually get 1 kilowatt more power and 2 newton meters more torque. I assume that's because you can rev this thing out to a little bit higher in the rev range, which probably gets you that little extra bit of power, but they both use the same engine, but this is also just a little bit lighter as well. So if you're looking for the best bang for your buck in terms of power and lightness, the manual Mazda 2 is actually the way to go. Now this base model here comes with plenty of stuff that I'm actually a big fan of, like a leather wrapped steering wheel. You still get a 7-inch touchscreen, which has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You still get nice trim on the inside. It does feel a little bit cheap with the plastic in here, but for $26,000, which is what this costs, it's actually not too bad at all. Now the 6-speed manual is really slick, and for people going, I don't want to drive a manual in traffic, like, it's actually fine. I drive a manual transmission R-Bar 500, and that thing is way worse to drive in traffic. This thing has the lightest clutch I've felt in a long time, so it's super easy to get into gear. And even though this thing doesn't have a whole bunch of torque, even at the low RPMs, this thing is able to pick up quite well. So if you're in second gear going at low speeds, this thing isn't lurching or getting upset that you're at low revs. So that's what I like a lot about this transmission. Now you still get a leather wrapped manual handbrake here, and you have some nice controls with some very nice sounds as well. I really like the physical controls for the screen, but that's really about it. It's pretty basic in here. You do have start, engine, stop, which I found a bit interesting, but you also do get things like automatic wipers and automatic headlamps, and you also get LED lights and, you know, decent looking 15-inch alloy wheels, which yeah, I think they have to be the smallest wheels I've tested in any new car. But here's the thing, the ride's comfortable. You get plenty of safety technology as well. Like you get blind spot monitoring and you get reversing cameras, and you also get lane centering as well. So there's a lot to like about this base model here. And it's actually fun to shift between your gears, and you do get a gear shift indicator as well to let you know which gear you should be in. And also I will say that the base model speakers are actually pretty decent as well. So if you're looking for something to blast your music through, you're actually gonna be fine playing music through here. But a note was made by one of my passengers saying, is this a 2023 model? Because it doesn't really feel like one. And I sort of have to agree with them there, where the interior doesn't really feel like it's been updated as much as the exterior. But they've done a good job of throwing more technology and more safety and more luxury features at you here, which helps justify the higher price. But if you compare this to the 2014 original version of the Mazda 2, which was available with a manual as well, it had less power, but it was around $20,000 in today's money. So as I experienced with the manual base model of the Mazda 2, I actually find this car to be quite enjoyable to drive. Now, the manual's a lot of fun, and if you want maximum enjoyment, you're gonna have to go and buy that, because to be honest, for an affordable little hatchback, that's a great little manual gearbox, and it is just a ton of fun. But here I have the automatic, which isn't too bad either because of one really important thing. You can shift this into manual mode, which is pretty fun, and when you shift down, it won't upshift. And so just like a sequential gearbox you'd find in a race car, you pull down on the gear lever to go up a gear, and you push against it to go down a gear. And it's actually quite decent to engage with and a whole bunch of fun. It just really doesn't feel like a slush box, which these automatics and these affordable cars can feel like. Now, don't get me wrong, like shifts aren't lightning quick, but what I do enjoy is the driver engagement here. So we're going through a corner, the steering just loads up nicely, and you aren't feeling like you're straining too much. You have this little sport mode to give you a tiny bit more feedback from the car in terms of like revs and, you know, shifts and holding and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, it's really a competent tiny little car in terms of like the ride is it's pretty smooth. It can feel a little bit upset over some bumpy bits of road, but for the most part, it's pretty good. Going up through here, for example, I can just stay on the throttle and enjoy this bit of road and actually get a bit more power out of this thing if I'm not carrying more than, say, one other passenger and some luggage. When you do load this up with people, it starts to feel underpowered, and that's what I found with the manual, and I had to really rev it out to get up the speed limit when I had 5 people in the car. But then cornering this thing, because of all this Mazda wizardry that they'd put into here, that they'll call it different things like G-vectoring plus and all that sort of stuff, it corners relatively flat. So if I go to turn, you can just feel the car turn, and you know, you sort of stay still in the seat, but you feel very much in control of the Mazda 2. Now let's talk about the boring stuff. First of all, fuel economy, I've been averaging around 7.8 litres per 100 Ks for this naturally aspirated 1.5 litre 4-cylinder motor, which actually isn't too bad. I like the things like the active lane keep assist, which activates when you're driving along. You can turn that off as well. Now braking in this thing is nice and smooth thanks to a pretty pillowy feeling brake pedal. This thing doesn't really feel all that bitey, and those rear drum brakes are actually pretty smooth, which is great, but I would have liked to have seen maybe disc brakes on the rear, especially in 2023, for a bit of extra braking performance. Now the pitch and roll in this thing isn't bad at all, and that's something that I found to be quite enjoyable to take passengers in this thing, because it is quite a flat handling little hatchback. Now it does have comfortable suspension, which is great for day-to-day driving, but it doesn't feel like it's falling apart through corners. So as we go through some twisty corners through here, it's actually quite a lot of fun. Now you will find that these skinnier tires will start to lead into understeer, and that's when it doesn't get so enjoyable. But just for a bit of fun through corners, if this is like your first car or it's your only car because you're looking to save a bit of money, you're not really sacrificing too much for the driving experience, because Mazdas are known for handling quite well, and the Mazda 2 still does that just with ease. It's actually quite a lot of fun, even in this automatic, to just cruise through corners. And I like the fact this has a floor mounted accelerator pedal, because it sort of allows you to squeeze on that power and roll off it quite smoothly. And cornering through here, it's really quite fun. And I just found the manual enhanced all this. So if you do want the most fun in Mazda 2, you have to buy the manual. It was just that fun. But this automatic, really great for day-to-day driving. I was a bit worried it might not be so smooth, because I did find driving the manual to be relatively smooth, but this is actually quite all right. And what's funny is that you'll probably surprise people who aren't suspecting that your little Mazda can corner as well as this. Like, it's just ridiculous. Normally, you know, grandmas and all that are driving Mazda 2s, or, you know, people who don't really care about driving. But if you do care about driving and you are considering about getting a Mazda 2, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder front-wheel drive hatchbacks can be boring, can be bad, but the Mazda 2 is definitely not one of those. It's, You can feel a little bit of the MX-5 DNA in here, especially because this isn't the rebadged Toyota Yaris version of the Mazda 2. It's quite fun. Yeah, I mean, like, overall, it's a comfortable daily driver. It's really easy to park. It's decently fuel efficient. I just got a little wave from an MX-5 driver because they respect this car. This car is well respected in the car community, just like something like the Honda Jazz. It is a surprising little hatchback that is just very cute to look at. It's very practical. It should be affordable to run. And thankfully, the driving experience is actually just really enjoyable in an underpowered car like this. And to give you an idea how fun this thing is to actually drive, you can drive this car in Gran Turismo. So if Gran Turismo thinks it's fun enough to drive on racetracks, it is the classic adage that it is more fun to drive a slow car fast than it is to drive a fast car slow, and that's exactly what this is. Now, if you want a lightweight car that's more practical than an MX-5 from Mazda, well, you could buy the Mazda 2. Now, I know it's getting a bit old and it's not as flashy as some other cars out on the market, but to be honest, in this segment, I do think it has a great design, has awesome driving capabilities, and it's gonna be something that is gonna be hopefully reliable and cheap to run over the long term, because nothing much has changed on this car for a long while. And that's why cars like the Toyota Land Cruiser 70 series are so popular, because they don't want to change something that ain't broke. And that's exactly what the Mazda 2 is in 2023. And so I think with this update, Mazda made this thing far more appealing for people who want a brightly colored and aesthetic small little hatchback, which is more closely upmarket to cars like the Fiat 500 than it is with those other cars like the MG3 and the Suzuki Ignis, which feel a bit more affordable and don't look as good as this. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more car content, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram using the handle @ProductReviewCars, and make sure to review your own car on productreview.com.au. My name's Cameron. I'll see you in the next one.